other people are out there on the roadways? How many other children are going to school that are disconnected in this way, where they are just on autopilot and they're watching themselves, but they really have no connection with consciousness to know what they're doing? That's what these drugs do to people.
Yes.
And so anyway, go ahead.
I just want to say what really disgusts me, especially with the children, is that these children are not even conscious yet. You imagine taking a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old and giving that child a drug before they even have their own consciousness yet. I mean, it's like, what kind of a development are they going to have emotionally and mentally if they start off being drugged before they're even aware of who they are or that they're a separate entity in the world?
Well, I can tell you what kind of results we have. We have Columbine, we have Virginia Tech, we have all of those kind of results, because that's exactly what they are a result of.
Exactly.
Our children are disconnected because we are forcibly drugging our children in the United States of America, and it sickens me. It sickens me that I was part of it, and I feel passionate. What I tell people is I'm not passionate, I'm compassionate. I am compassionate, and I am pissed off, and I'm doing something about it. I'm no hero. I'm no brave person. I'm just doing what I think is right, and I want people to hear me, and I want them to stop doing this to themselves and to their families and stop falling into this trap that pharma has laid for them. This is an agenda to make as many Americans lifelong pharmaceutical customers as possible and to dumb us down and make us apathetic, and we're all going to be so disconnected and drugged that our families are falling apart. We have no relationships left. It's just crazy what's happening. And when I sound like I get upset, it's because I think about all of these lives that I have touched in the last 3 years working in this, arena and sharing this information with people, and just seeing that how many people truly thought it was them. That everybody is afraid to discuss it, that it's a big, hush-hush thing because mental illness has such a stigma to it. It was designed this way, people. If I can't get through to just 1 or 2 people, I've got to tell the masses. It was designed for this to happen. So people've got to wake up and pay attention, or they're going to be in the same boat I'm in. What happened to my niece was the most tragic thing that has ever occurred in my lifetime, and I didn't think I would survive it because she had lived with me for a while, and I was very close to her. And she came to Texas to try to get my help. She couldn't study. She dropped out of school. She took odd job after odd job. She couldn't function. She started doing street drugs. She started going downhill, and she came to Texas, and I tried to salvage her. And it was too late. I couldn't get any of the people that were responsible for her care to listen to me. No one would listen to the evidence that I was presenting them. And because she had a label on her that was considered, she was dangerous to herself or others, they would not stop forcibly drugging her. So what happened was she went off all of her drugs herself, cold turkey, without telling anybody. And that is devastating. You can never, ever go cold turkey off of any psychiatric drug. You have to be tapered and weaned off of it slowly, depending on the length of time, depending on the drug, depending on, your other medical conditions. It can take months, sometimes even years, to successfully withdraw from psychiatric drugs. And so she put herself in a tailspin, shocked her body, and her symptoms just went through the roof. And the withdrawal symptoms, which, by the way, mimic all of the symptoms that the drugs are designed to treat, only they're worse. So people think that they're just losing their minds, they're going down the tubes, which is what she thought. And her mother, my sister, was doing exactly what she was advised to do by the experts, so I cannot fault her for that. But again, I knew the information, but here I'm a prophet in my own land. I couldn't get my family to listen to me. I couldn't get my sister to listen to me. I couldn't get my niece's doctors to listen to me. And so they told her when they found out that she had, withdrawn herself from the drugs, that she was going to forcibly be placed back on the drugs. So my sister was on the way home to get her, take her back to the psychiatrist, and my niece tried to hang herself. She fashioned a rope from her shoelaces and attached it to the ceiling fan in the living room and tried to hang herself, but her body weight pulled the fan out of the ceiling, so she was unsuccessful. So I guess she was desperate, frantic. I don't know what her frame of mind was, but she walked into her younger sister's room and took an angel-shaped oil lantern, poured it over her head, and ignited it and burned herself alive. And I don't think that there's anything more devastating than to lose a loved one, but I will never, ever in my life forget the smell of burnt flesh in that house when I walked through it afterwards. And that's something that people need to be aware of, is that these drugs cause people to do things that we've never, ever dreamed. Violent means that they kill themselves and other people. We've never dreamed was possible. I mean, you hear in the past when people killed themselves, yes, they hung themselves, yes, they slit their wrist and got into a hot tub of water, or they put the hose into the exhaust of the car and, went out that way falling asleep. But now people do horrible, violent things to themselves, such as this. And this is a direct result of the drugs that they're on. And it needs to be identified. It needs to be talked about. And we need to save as many people as we possibly can.
Yes, I can't imagine a more painful way to leave this earth than to set yourself on fire. And I actually know of a woman that did that after a court proceeding and went to the steps of the court and set herself on fire. All of these different things are involved one with the other. All of these minions, the psychiatrists, the judges, they're all involved in getting people to be labeled as mentally ill. And then once you've been deemed a psychiatric situation, of course, you're no longer able to be responsible for yourself. So you have to have somebody else be in charge of you. And as you said, they were threatening to force her to put her back on the drugs after she knew that all these drugs were causing her all of these problems. I mean, I can't imagine a worse situation than that, to lose the very jurisdiction over your own body, especially when you know that what they're doing to you is making you sick. And I'm just curious, was there any kind of investigation after this? Was there ever any admission on the parts of those who were treating her that they had
None
caused
whatsoever.
This
None whatsoever. In fact, my mother tried to sue, and they threw her case out of court because they couldn't identify any one drug as being responsible. It was a disease state that my niece had that caused her to commit suicide.
And I bet that's one reason they put them on the cocktails, because then when these things occur, they can use that very excuse. Well, we can't be sure what drug it was. I mean, isn't that very clever of them? It's just mind-boggling that they're allowed to get away with this. And, of course, now that they actually do have black box warnings for suicide and homicide on some of these drugs, one has to wonder how many thousands of times must this have happened for them to finally admit that that's a problem.
Oh, absolutely, because we have to take into mind that the FDA itself says that there are only about 1 to 10% of adverse events and deaths, et cetera, reported. So anytime they're telling us that, 20 people died, you need to multiply that by 100 in order to get a more accurate number as to what's probably actually taking place.
Exactly, and this is true for vaccines as well. I mean, all of these drugs. And another thing I wanted to just make clear to the listeners is that when you actually look up the side effects of the drugs in the physician's desk reference, or let me also say that the same thing holds true for pets. If you look up the side effects of the drugs in the compendium of veterinary products, these are only the side effects that the companies themselves admit to, correct?
Correct. That's
the FDA
correct.
does not test anything. They just believe the drug company.
That's absolutely correct. And I've found case after case where they go back and they examine the clinical data and they find that it was misrepresented, that it was, they didn't report deaths. Sometimes things will come out in the clinical journals, when drugs have been tried and that sort of thing. People die and they don't even mention it in the article. So, I mean, this is something that goes on a consistent basis. It's not one manufacturer. It's not like you've got one bad guy and that's, one apple that's spoiling the whole bunch. I worked for several different companies, both as a contract employee and because I was working during the 90s when we had all the buyouts, mergers, and all that sort of thing. I worked for 3 major companies, and they all approached this business in the same manner. some more unethically than others, but they all approached it in this manner.
And there's no kind of oversight, correct? I mean, when you're a pharmaceutical drug rep, you're kind of a independent contractor, aren't you? If you tell the doctor something, then isn't the company going to kind of, separate themselves from the drug rep and kind of like just have you do their dirty work?
Yeah, that's the reason for the toe-to-toe, knee-to-knee, where that you learn to regurgitate pharma's spiel, is because if you say anything outside of the box, you're on your own.
Wow.
And they will tell you, I've had district manager after district manager tell me, some little pearl of wisdom that I could do that was maybe out of ethics, or maybe a little bit illegal, but would get the job done. If I were you, I would do it this way. But if you ever say I told you that, I will deny it, because it will be on your head and on your shoulder, not mine. But the monetary incentives are so huge. I mean, the money, I was making six figures, plus then every quarter you had the eligibility of bonus money. So if you met your quotas, then you could, walk out with several $1,000s more to buy whatever, or there were prizes and incentives along the way to meet quotas and that sort of thing. So as a young person, and, when you get a nice high-profile job that's paying well with a company car, and you wear nice suits every day, and, you're referred to as someone who's educating doctors and everything, you start to get a little full of yourself, too. And they intend for it to be that way. You're indoctrinated to think that you're actually healing the world and you're helping people. So you go out there and you try to penetrate the market as much as you possibly can, because you think you're not only benefiting people, but you're also making a really nice income.
Yeah. And I was just curious, what is the training required to become a pharmaceutical drug rep? What kind of, schooling do you have to have?
Preferably no medical training. Preferably no. You don't want to have a pharmaceutical rep that is too well educated, because then you get someone like me that after 15 years asks too many intelligently critical questions, or critically intelligent questions, rather. And then people start to get uncomfortable, because you have to be pretty much have a good knowledge, be able to learn things, be smart enough to have a good knowledge base overall in order to be able to communicate with people. But they don't want you to have too great of an understanding of what's going on, because they don't want you to put your own personal interpretation or spin on anything. So that's the reason why they like people like, I was an ex-beauty queen. Now they hire a lot of cheerleaders, and they like people that are good-looking, affable, gregarious, easy to get along with, approachable, and then those people have access to doctors.
Yes. And how
education has very little to do with it. You have to have a college degree, of course, because, doctors expect you to have a college degree to try to talk to them. But that's pretty much, I was a language major.
Mm-hmm. And how do the bonuses work? Like, do they tell you, is it based on the number of doctors that you're associating with? I mean, they're not able to tell exactly how many prescriptions are written just based on your meeting with the doctors, are they, or do they keep track of those things?
Oh, no. That information is sold through data companies, prescription data tracking, and that information comes to you in reports on a monthly basis that shows you what the physicians in your territory are doing, who they're writing for, what they're writing, how much they're writing, so that you can actually pinpoint who the most productive doctors are, where you can grow your business the best, and who's not supporting your drugs, so that you can go in and, call them on the carpet.
And
when I say call them on the carpet, as a doctor, I know to you that sounds strange, but reps have a way of doing that. I'll give you a good example. This is how I would call a doctor on the carpet about not writing my product, okay? Say I would find out, I would ask his receptionist or nurse, what is his favorite pie? Find out what his favorite pie is for me. So she would find out what the favorite pie was. I would come in the next time, and then I would do a pie chart on the pie, cutting that physician a very small piece of the pie, of his favorite pie, to give to him. And, of course, then they would look at me like, well, can I have a larger piece? And eventually they would say that. And then I would look at him and say, well, this is what your market share represents of what you're prescribing out of all of your, say, nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. That was my little portion of your business. If you want a bigger piece of the pie, guess what? So do I.
That is amazing.